Nearly 30 years after JonBenét Ramsey was murdered, the evidence that could finally name her killer sits in a box, untested, untouched, and ignored. And behind closed doors, there are whispers that some inside the system are just waiting for her father to die, so the pressure disappears with him. If that sounds like a conspiracy, it's not. It's the quiet reality of a case that's been frozen by bureaucracy, pride, and fear. But here's the question that matters now. In a world where DNA can speak louder than any witness, why won't they let it speak for JonBenét? And what are they so afraid it might say? But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. We've just crossed 1,000 subscribers, all because of your support, and we need that same energy to reach 2,000, then 5,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your DNA on that subscribe button, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. Today, we're not here to chase rumors or spin wild theories. We're here to follow the facts, to lay out what's been hidden in plain sight, and to ask a system that claims it's still investigating why, nearly 3 decades later, it's done so little with the tools that could finally deliver justice. Because this isn't just about a cold case, it's about a child who still deserves the truth, a father who refuses to give up, and a system that's running out of excuses. Let's get into it. On a cold morning in December 1996, JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old girl with bright eyes and a future that would never arrive, was found dead in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home. Her death would become one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history. But what's often lost in the headlines and the tabloid noise is the evidence that's still sitting in a police storage locker, evidence that modern science could test, but hasn't. The garrote used to strangle her, the underwear she wore that night, the ransom note found inside the house, and a flashlight left suspiciously on the kitchen counter. These aren't just old items collecting dust. They're potential vessels of DNA. DNA that could connect to someone in a database, or even to a relative through advanced genealogical testing. And while the world moved on, these pieces of evidence have remained locked away, largely untested with the methods we now have at our fingertips. This isn't about rehashing every theory or pointing fingers at the family or strangers. This is about the physical evidence that exists, the science that can analyze it, and the silence that surrounds why that hasn't happened. Because the truth doesn't care about rumors. The truth is sitting on swabs and fibers in a lab somewhere, waiting for someone to finally ask the right question: why hasn't it been tested? For most families, the weight of grief eventually forces them into silence, worn down by years without answers. But JonBenét's father, John Ramsey, chose a different path. Nearly 3 decades later, he's still showing up at cold case summits, in front of cameras at legislative hearings, repeating the same clear message: test the DNA. All of it. He's not chasing conspiracy theories. He's not demanding the impossible. He's asking for the evidence to be tested with the tools we have today. Because if DNA cracked the Golden State Killer case 40 years later, why hasn't it been fully applied to one of the most famous child murder cases in America? In January 2025, John sat across from Boulder Police Chief Stephen Reddern, a new face in a long line of officials who have held this case in their hands. This time, John wasn't alone. He was backed by representatives from some of the most advanced forensic labs in the country, labs that specialize in genetic genealogy, the very science that has solved hundreds of cold cases, even with degraded or mixed samples. Many of these experts offered to help at no cost, removing every financial excuse from the table. John walked out of that meeting, allowing himself to feel something rare: optimism. A faint sense that maybe, just maybe, the case was finally about to move forward. But hope, as John knows better than most, is not enough, because a promise in a meeting room means nothing until action follows. And in this case, action is exactly what's been missing. In 1996, DNA testing was a blunt instrument, limited, slow, and often inconclusive with mixed or degraded samples. But today the science has evolved into something precise and relentless. Tools like SNP testing, mitochondrial DNA tracing, and advanced genealogical matching have solved cases once thought impossible. Take the Golden State Killer, a case cold for decades, cracked because DNA technology finally caught up with the evidence. Or the Bear Brook murders, where genetic genealogy revealed identities hidden for over 30 years. These breakthroughs happened not because someone confessed, but because the science was finally allowed to speak. What makes JonBenét's case even more tragic is that the evidence that could hold the answers is still here. The grot, the underwear, the ransom note, the flashlight, each of these could contain microscopic traces, fragments of DNA that, when run through advanced databases and genealogical tools, could build a family tree leading directly to the person responsible. This isn't wishful thinking. It's a proven method that's cleared cold cases across the country, even when samples were decades old or mixed with other DNA. And in many of those cases, it wasn't a major police department that pushed for the testing. It was families, private labs, and outside experts stepping in where the system failed to move. The question now isn't whether the science can do it. The question is whether those holding the evidence will allow it to be done. With the evidence available and the science ready, you'd think the next step would be simple.
Test it.
But in Boulder, it's not that simple. Despite offers from top-tier forensic labs, many willing to analyze the evidence at no cost, the Boulder Police Department has kept the case locked under their control. They say the investigation is still active, that every lead is being followed, that every option is on the table. But behind those words, the evidence remains exactly where it's been for nearly 30 years, untouched by the tools that could actually break the case open. And while the public statements remain polished and reassuring, there are whispers in the background. At CrimeCon 2024, a gathering of victims' families, detectives, and journalists, John Ramsey heard a rumor that cuts deeper than any official press release. Someone allegedly overheard Boulder officers saying they were just waiting for him to die so the pressure would disappear with him. Boulder PD denied the claim, calling it baseless. But for those who have followed this case, the concern isn't whether that exact statement was made, it's that the system's inaction has felt that way for years. Promises made, then broken. Opportunities to move forward, ignored. Offers of help, declined. And all the while, the evidence sits, and time keeps moving. The silence from those in charge is louder than any denial, and the longer this continues, the clearer it becomes that the barrier isn't the science. It's the system protecting itself from the possibility that it failed. In early 2025, a new Netflix documentary, Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey, dropped like a match onto dry grass. It didn't just rehash the same tired theories. It challenged the official timeline, questioned the silence around untested evidence, and reminded the world how far justice in this case still is. Almost overnight, public interest surged again. Social media flooded with clips, commentary, and calls for reform. For John Ramsey, it wasn't just noise, it was momentum, something he could use. He began a new wave of advocacy, not just for JonBenét, but for every child whose case has gone cold, buried under bureaucracy. His proposal was simple. When a child is murdered, especially in unsolved cases, local politics should no longer dictate justice. Instead, federal jurisdiction should automatically take over, putting the FBI in control from the start. No more local turf wars. No more evidence sitting untouched for decades. No more waiting for someone to retire or step down before a case can move forward. And most importantly, it would open the door for national-level forensic labs to step in early, while evidence still holds its power. Because when you step back and ask the hard question, what if JonBenét's case had been handed to the FBI on day one, would we even be telling this story today? Now let's get back to the case. The idea of federal jurisdiction in unsolved child homicides isn't just a dream, it's a necessity. Across the country, cases that sat cold for decades have been solved when outside experts were allowed in with the right tools. Look at the Boston Strangler, the Bear Brook murders, or the Colorado hammer killings from the 1980s. Cases cracked wide open by independent labs, using advanced genealogical matching and DNA science once local control was lifted. These aren't stories of luck. They're stories of what happens when a system steps aside and lets the science work. And that's exactly what John Ramsey and many others are fighting for now, a clear path that takes the politics and local ego out of cases where the stakes are too high to gamble with. Several Colorado legislators have already voiced their support, acknowledging that local limitations have stifled progress in not just JonBenét's case but others across the state. Behind closed doors, discussions are happening about policy reform, expanding DNA access, and removing bureaucratic bottlenecks that keep evidence in limbo. And the momentum isn't coming just from grieving families, it's coming from retired detectives, federal agents, and forensic experts who have spent their careers solving the impossible. They all agree on one thing: the technology exists, the evidence exists, and the time for waiting has passed. The reality of a cold case is that time is not on anyone's side. Memories fade, witnesses disappear, and evidence, even when carefully preserved, is not immune to the slow decay of years. But there's another clock ticking, one that isn't talked about enough: the clock on the people who still care. John Ramsey is now in his 80s. He has spent nearly 3 decades fighting to get his daughter's case tested with tools that could finally reveal the truth. And while officials repeat that the case is still active, each year that passes feels like another year of silence, another year where the system fails to act while it still can. DNA doesn't care about rumors, pride, or office politics. It doesn't care about whose reputation might be hurt, or which department looks bad. It simply tells the truth, in cold, biological facts that don't change with the passing decades. But the longer this evidence sits untouched, the greater the risk that the truth it holds will slip away forever. Because DNA may not lie, but the window to test it effectively isn't infinite. And when that window closes, it won't just be the system that failed, it will be the final chance for justice that disappears, leaving only questions behind. For John Ramsey, this is why he hasn't stopped pushing. Because for him, justice isn't a wish, it's a deadline. And unless someone is willing to fight for that deadline, it will come and go, leaving JonBenét's name echoing in empty rooms where the truth should have spoken. Nearly 3 decades have passed, but JonBenét Ramsey's name still echoes, not just because of what happened to her, but because of what hasn't happened since. Evidence that could tell the truth is still waiting, while the system that claims to seek justice keeps choosing silence over action. Her father is still pleading, the labs are still ready, and the world is still watching. The question now is whether 2025 will be the year something finally moves, or if the case will remain another example of a system too slow to save itself, even when the answers are within reach. Here on Detective Max, we're going to keep following every lead, every statement, every quiet policy meeting, until the evidence is tested or the system runs out of excuses. Because silence has gone on long enough. If you want to stay updated as this story continues, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your voice matters in a case where accountability is overdue, and where the fight for justice is still not over. I'm Detective Max. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next investigation.